Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, welcome to Joe and Katrina's wedding reception. Yeah, there we go. There's the energy we're looking for. Table 5, we're the party group. We've already established it. Thank you, guys. My name is Ryan. It is an honor to be your master of ceremonies and DJ tonight. I want to thank you all so much for coming out to celebrate with Joe and Katrina. It is a beautiful night to celebrate love. And in just a moment, they're going to walk through that door into the best celebration they have ever had, surrounded by everybody that they love the most. But before they join us, there's some really special people they'd love for you to meet. So would you please wave or stand up in your seats, say hello for us, starting with Katrina's parents, Ron and Jane Wingle. Now say hi to Joe's parents, Joe and Martha Fiacchi. Now, leading off our wedding party are the two ladies that have stood alongside Katrina through just about everything, her sisters Amanda and Rebecca. Amanda is the elder, wiser sister. She's also the family's world traveler. Did anyone here know that Amanda went to Rwanda? Well, if you didn't, make sure you ask Jane about it later. Rebecca is the youngest of the three. Katrina used to kick Rebecca out of her room whenever she'd have friends over because, as everyone knows, younger siblings totally cramp your style. But as it turns out, as they've gotten older, Rebecca has become one of Katrina's absolute favorite people. So please welcome co-maids of honor, Amanda and Rebecca Wingle. These next two are the party animals of the group. They both attended SUNY Brockport, where between them they have studies in math, English, and psychology, but above all else, it's where they became classically trained in partying. Say hello to J. Allen Baylor Jr. and Amy Del Bello. Now entering the court, it's Team Fiacchi, minus their MVP for the night. You'll rarely see them outside wearing anything other than various pieces of sporting gear, but hot dang do they look good all dressed up. Leading off the team, he's the second son, but he's number 7 in your hearts. And sorry ladies, he is taken. Say hello to Will Fiacchi. Next is the only man to win $500 and give most of it back. Look out if he's hanging off his tongue. It's James Fiacchi. Next is the only girl to survive 4 brothers and grow up knowing that she's bigger, smarter, and wittier than all 4 of them, Maggie Fiacchi. And some call this one the baby, some call him the free spirit, but everyone knows he's the man. It's Tommy Philip Fiacchi. These next two are very near and dear to both Katrina and Joe. Dick was the early bloomer. They say men don't lose their hair entirely, it just comes out other places. Dick has had a full-grown beard since the 8th grade and consequently a receding hairline. He's joined by Katrina's travel partner Sarah, without whom Katrina would be still lost in Europe, either wandering the London subway system or stuck on a bus route in Rome. Please welcome Dick Williams and Sarah Ordway. Now this next couple's story begins at Club Miami. Club Miami, the social hotspot of SUNY Brockport, full of glow sticks and loud music and glow-in-the-dark paint on the walls, also known as Jay's dorm room. It was the scene of much of the nightlife for Katrina and her friends as they adjusted to freshman year. Many people came and went from these events without much notice, one of which was a visiting sophomore from another campus by the name of Joe. This was the night that would set their futures in motion. As you sit here today, you may be thinking this is when their eyes met, and time slowed down all around them. Their hearts began to beat faster as the sparks flew, and they knew in an instant they were meant to be together. That just means you've seen way too many Disney movies. No, it was a night just like any other night. Joe and Katrina became casual acquaintances who would continue to see each other from time to time. Now, they clearly traveled in the same circles, so they would find themselves at a lot of the same social gatherings for the next 4 years. They started to build a friendship, the kind of friendship that all students build with their peers because of shared life circumstances and their goals and their schooling, and the kind of which are gradually forgotten after graduation as you move on with adult life and careers and families. And before she knew it, Katrina was a senior. She was hosting a party at her house, and the usual list of suspects arrived, plus a few more. Meanwhile, Joe, unaware to whose house he was going, showed up at the party with Jay. Now, something inside of him changed that night. His inner James Bond took over, and when he got to the party, he saw Katrina, walked up to her, took her in her arms, and kissed her without saying a word. Now, something about that kiss intrigued her. From that moment on, she clearly saw Joe in a different light. In 4 years, they never had that type of connection. And with one kiss, their friendship is completely redefined. Her friends couldn't believe who she was spending all of her time with. Literally, couldn't believe it. They had to ask several times to make sure they heard it right. Joe Fiocchi? Really? But one could say that it was fate. They didn't do a whole lot of actual dating right away because they're both broke college students, nigh on graduation, and they didn't live near each other for quite some time. Then one night, they were visiting in Albany, and Hurricane Irene struck the East Coast. They happened to be out and about when the worst of the storm touched Albany, but Joe had farther to go home than Katrina did, and he also had a little bit more to drink than Katrina did. And his liquid courage gave him probably some stronger sea legs than he might have otherwise had, and decided to walk home through the storm. Not wanting him to be alone that night, Katrina agreed to walk with him. And through the heavy rain, the blurred vision, Joe saw just how much Katrina really cared about him, and realized she felt it too. So that night, they made their relationship official. Now, they'd already had many casual conversations over the last several years because when you're involved with someone long distance, casual conversation's really about all you've got. So they didn't have that awkward getting to know you period that a lot of new couples have when they first decide to really give dating a try. They were still long distance though, and adding a label to it didn't make the distance any easier. They began to wonder where it was going. She was in Rochester, he was in Syracuse, and both were trying to figure out where their lives were taking them. Would it take them to the same city? One Valentine's Day, their commitment to one another got a little clearer. It was a weekday, and they both had jobs, they both had to work the next day, so they had just decided that they weren't going to see each other that year. So Katrina instead spent the night with her friend Emily and Emily's boyfriend. Emily was her roommate, her boyfriend was there, so classic date night with a third wheel. During the movie, they hear footsteps out on the stairs on the ladder behind their apartment. And their first instinct was what anybody's first instinct would be, late night watching a movie and you hear footsteps behind your second floor window. Somebody's breaking in. The panic sets across their face, and then they see the face appear over the threshold to the window. Much to their surprise, it was Joe, come to surprise them that night, climbing through the window like a 90s sitcom boyfriend, to which Emily and her boyfriend said, "Aww." By now, Katrina had become obsessed with seeing Joe. She would make the drive from Rochester every weekend to Syracuse, and once in a while, if his car would cooperate, he would make the trip to see her. And after nearly a year and a half of the long, tiring commute, Katrina packed her bags and moved to Syracuse. Now, as they moved in together, they found some slightly challenging things to get used to in their new routines. For example, Joe was used to having a healthy social life with his friends and had to learn to rebalance that a bit. Katrina, on the other hand, had to get used to a new meal schedule. You see, she can get pretty hangry, and they had to compromise a little bit on when they would settle down to dinner together. She also tends to hoard cups. Her insatiable thirst makes sure there's always a beverage nearby, so at any given moment, Their bedroom's got at least 5 empty cups just laying around. Just as bad as how disorganized he really is. For example, Katrina just doesn't have time to help him find his keys in his wallet every single day. After all, there is a bowl by the front door for that reason, for goodness sake. But above it all, they're very pragmatic. Moving in together seemed to be the next logical step for their relationship, so they adjusted quickly. And when asked, they can each tell you what each other's pet peeves are, which means they communicate pretty well. And to this day, they always look forward to seeing each other's smiling faces when they come home at the end of the day. Now, Katrina knew as soon as she moved to Syracuse that she wanted to spend her life alongside Joe. Moving in together would be the ultimate field test. Their long-distance relationship had helped strengthen her feelings too. As a great philosopher once said, "Absence is to love what wind is to fire. It extinguishes the small, but it kindles the great." It took Joe a little while to realize what he wanted, but he recognizes that he's a much better person with Katrina. He makes much better decisions about his own life and his own well-being, and he had never pictured himself getting married until her. Joe found out that Katrina had always wanted her grandmother's ring, so thanks to a little help from Jane, he was able to secure it. Now, finding the right time to pop the question was a different matter. They were planning a brewery tour in Maine, and he thought that would be the ideal time. On the night of the trip, he told her they'd go to the beach. As Katrina prepped for the day, put on shorts and sandals, Joe puts on a button-down and slacks. Now, she's clearly confused. What are you doing? It's the first tip-off. Dress clothes at 10 a.m. to go to the beach on vacation. Something is up. He's nervous the entire trip. All of the waiting was about to become worthwhile. All of his plans would come together. Except she spent the whole car ride complaining. Her contacts had gotten dry and irritated, so she made him stop at a drugstore for some solution, which was probably for the best, because why risk ruining the perfect proposal moment when she can't see through her cloudy and itchy eyes? The moment finally came. And as Joe walked out onto the beach, he stared out into the ocean for a moment, as if he could see their entire futures spread out before them in that seascape. Finally, taking a deep breath, he turned around, took to one knee and said, "Will you marry me?" Now, it took no time for Katrina's emotions to take over, and she responded with the first words that came to mind. "Are you sure?" "Yes." "Are you sure?" "It's been 6 years by this point, so we gotta be sure." They both finally said yes, and the rest, as they say, is history. Now, there's so much to love about these two, which is why they fell in love in the first place. Joe has a never-ending desire to learn and improve upon himself. Since they've been together, he's learned photography, computer coding, wiring, and gardening. She doesn't always have that drive, but she loves that he does, and his excitement motivates her to want to try new things of her own. He's also gotten her to slow down and focus on the here and now and not just think about what's around the next corner. Katrina is the most caring person Joe has ever known. And she's influenced the way he thinks about the world and the people around him. Her drive and her organization has motivated him to achieve his goals. And as they found out at the bridal shower, he considers her very adaptable. Ask him about that later if you don't know. Together they look forward to achieving their financial stability. They've always wondered what it would be like to have their own business. With her business savvy and his creative chops, they'd make quite a team. They love traveling and can't wait to see where their journey takes them. And they also look forward to adopting more dogs because they're basically practice kids. And tonight, they look forward to celebrating with all of you. So please welcome the couple whose love story is only just beginning, the new Mr. and Mrs. Fiocchi, Joe and Katrina